My name is Melissa Wright, and I just turned 35. I spent $600 on a birthday party nobody attended. As I sat alone among balloons and untouched cake, my phone buzzed with birthday wishes from strangers online, but silence from those who claimed to love me. A month later, Mom texted about their 40th anniversary. "You owe $3,200 for the venue." That moment changed everything. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a like if you've ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. The morning of my 35th birthday started with such promise. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror, studying the small lines forming at the corners of my eyes, thinking about how far I'd come. At 35, I was a marketing executive at Bloom Cosmetics in Chicago, with my own downtown apartment and the financial stability I'd worked so hard to achieve. What most of my colleagues didn't know was the complicated family history behind my polished exterior. My parents, Barbara and Richard Wright, had always been more concerned with appearances than emotional connections. Growing up in our pristine suburban home in Evanston, I learned early that achievements were valued. Feelings were not. Mom was the queen of the neighborhood social scene, serving on every committee and hosting dinner parties where everything had to be perfect. "Melissa, stand up straight," she'd whisper through clenched teeth when guests arrived. "Nobody likes a slouching girl." Dad was physically present, but emotionally absent, buried in his financial advisor work and deferring to Mom on all family matters. From kindergarten art projects to college graduation, nothing I accomplished ever seemed quite good enough. An A-? Jennifer Porter's daughter got straight as the semester, Mom would say, sliding my report card back across the table with a disappointed sigh. Despite this, I kept trying. Every achievement became another attempt to win their approval. I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, landed a prestigious internship, and climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone expected. Each success was met with the same response: "Well, that's what we raised you to do." The financial manipulation started early. When I received my first work bonus of $5,000 at 23, Mom called in tears about a family emergency. They needed to borrow the money temporarily. I never saw a penny of it again. When I asked about my college fund they had promised throughout my childhood, Dad explained it had been lost in investments. I later discovered they had used it to renovate their kitchen. After a particularly hurtful Christmas 2 years ago, when Mom criticized my gift, my weight, and my relationship status in the span of 15 minutes, I decided to create some distance. I limited contact to monthly phone calls and occasional family dinners, focusing instead on building my career and nurturing friendships with people who actually seemed to enjoy my company. But something about turning 35 made me yearn for reconciliation. This milestone birthday felt like the perfect opportunity to rebuild bridges, to create a more mature relationship with my parents. I wanted to show them I had become someone worthy of their respect and, maybe finally, their genuine affection. I rented the private room at Bellissimo, an upscale Italian restaurant where Dad had once taken me for my 16th birthday, one of the few positive memories I had with him. I spent hours selecting the perfect invitations, adding handwritten notes to my parents and siblings about how much their presence would mean to me. This birthday marks a new chapter, and I want to share it with the people who've shaped my life. I wrote, believing every word. The responses came quickly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," Mom texted. My brother Tom and sister Rachel confirmed too. Even extended family members sent enthusiastic RSVPs. My friend Carly raised an eyebrow when I told her about the party plans. "Are you sure about this? Remember Thanksgiving last year?" she asked gently. I brushed off her concern, convinced this time would be different. "They've changed," I assured her. "We've all grown up a bit." The week before my birthday, I spent an entire Saturday shopping for the perfect outfit. I settled on a deep blue dress that made me feel confident and beautiful. As I stood in the dressing room, I imagined heartfelt conversations with my family, perhaps even an emotional toast from Dad acknowledging my accomplishments. For once, I allowed myself to hope. The morning of the party, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach. I spent extra time on my hair and makeup, carefully applied the perfume my sister had given me last Christmas, and arrived at Bellissimo an hour early to add personal touches to the room. I placed framed photos from happier family moments on the welcome table, arranged the party favors I'd carefully selected for each guest, and made sure the three-tier birthday cake was positioned just right at the center of the main table. As the clock ticked closer to the party's start time, I stood by the entrance, heart pounding with anticipation. I truly believed this would be the beginning of a new relationship with my family. I had no idea I would be spending my 35th birthday completely alone, or that it would set in motion events that would change everything. 6 o'clock came and went. I stood by the restaurant entrance, smoothing my dress and checking my phone every few minutes. Chicago traffic, I murmured to Mario, the maitre d', who kept glancing my way with increasing sympathy. By 6:30, I had texted both my parents and siblings. Running late? The appetizers are delicious. I kept my tone light, pushing down the familiar feeling of anxiety rising in my chest. At 7, I called Mom's cell. It went straight to voicemail. Dad's rang 6 times before disconnecting. Tom's phone was off. Rachel sent a brief text. Something came up. So sorry. No explanation, no promise to arrive later. By 7:30, I was sitting alone at a table set for 16, with Mario and his staff hovering awkwardly nearby. Perhaps your guests are having transportation problems? He suggested kindly. The weather forecast mentioned possible rain. The sky outside was clear and starlit. At 8, I mindlessly scrolled through Instagram while picking at a plate of calamari. A post from my brother stopped my finger mid-scroll. It showed my parents, Tom and Rachel at Sullivan's Steakhouse. The caption read, "Family dinner with the originals. Some traditions are worth keeping." The timestamp was from 30 minutes ago. I showed my phone to Mario with a shaky hand. "My family is at another restaurant," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. His expression shifted from sympathy to something deeper, almost pity. "Ms. Wright," he began hesitantly, "I should perhaps tell you, your mother called the restaurant this morning." My stomach dropped. What did she say? She canceled the family's attendance. Said there was a change of plans, but to keep the reservation for you, because you would understand. He looked away, uncomfortable with being the messenger. I sat back down, feeling the room spin slightly. They hadn't gotten stuck in traffic. They hadn't had last-minute emergencies. They had planned all along not to come, while letting me believe they would be there. I was still sitting motionless when Janet, a co-worker, popped her head into the room. "Melissa, happy birthday." She walked in with a gift bag, then stopped abruptly, taking in the empty tables and untouched food. "Am I early?" "No," I managed. "You're actually the only one who came." Janet stayed for 30 minutes, making awkward conversation while I tried to maintain what little dignity I had left. When she left, I asked the staff to pack up the cake and paid the bill, $600 for food nobody ate. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and tears. I placed the untouched birthday cake on my kitchen counter and stared at it, the cheerful, "Happy 35th birthday, Melissa" inscription now seeming like a cruel joke. I spent the night analyzing every interaction with my family over the past months, searching for clues I might have missed. Had I offended them somehow? Was this punishment for the distance I'd created? Or was this simply who they had always been, and I had been fooling myself to think otherwise? The next morning, I forced myself to go to work, plastering on a smile when colleagues asked about my birthday celebration. It was quiet, just what I wanted. I lied. But Jessica from accounting pulled me aside after lunch. "Melissa, I need to tell you something," she said, looking uncomfortable. "Your mother called several of us last week."
My heart sank.
"What did she say?" "She told us you'd had to cancel your party because of a family emergency, but that you didn't want anyone to know because you didn't want pity." Jessica hesitated. "But Janet said she went and nobody was there." The humiliation burned through me. My own mother had sabotaged my birthday, making sure not even my work friends would show up. It was deliberate, calculated, and deeply cruel. The revelation triggered a memory from my 12th birthday. Mom had planned a party at our house, But the night before, she criticized my excitement as attention-seeking and immature. When none of my invited friends arrived the next day, she said, "Maybe this will teach you some humility." I later discovered she had called their parents to cancel, but told me it was because nobody wanted to come. For the next week, I avoided my family's calls and texts, which suddenly started flowing in as if nothing had happened. "How was the birthday, sweetheart?" Mom texted 3 days later. When I finally responded with a terse, "You know exactly how it was," she replied with feigned confusion. "What do you mean? Did something go wrong?" I arranged to meet my parents for coffee, determined to confront them directly. At the cafe, Mom greeted me with an airy kiss near my cheek. Dad gave his usual distracted nod. "Why did you all bail on my birthday?" I asked bluntly after the pleasantries. Mom's expression didn't even flicker. "We told you we couldn't make it, honey. Don't you remember? You said you understood." "That never happened," I said, feeling my hands begin to shake. "You texted me saying you wouldn't miss it for the world." Mom turned to Dad with a concerned look. "Richard, I'm worried about Melissa's memory. Remember when she used to make things up as a child?" Dad merely shrugged. "You've been working too hard, Mel. Stress does funny things to the mind." I pulled out my phone and showed them the text conversation. Mom glanced at it dismissively. "I meant we wouldn't miss calling you on your birthday. Obviously, we had the family tradition at Sullivan's. We go every year for your birthday." It wasn't true. There was no such tradition. But as they continued to rewrite reality in front of me, I realized there was no point in arguing. They would never admit what they had done. I left the cafe feeling gaslit and diminished, exactly as I had countless times throughout my childhood. But this time, something had shifted inside me. The pain was evolving into something else, something harder and less forgiving. For the first time, I began to seriously question whether these people deserved any place in my life at all. 2 weeks after my birthday disaster, my uncle Frank called. He rarely reached out directly, so I was surprised to see his name on my caller ID. "Melissa, how are you holding up?" he asked, his voice gentle in a way that immediately put me on edge.
"I'm fine. Why?"
There was a pause. "Your mom told everyone you had a mental breakdown at your birthday party. She said you screamed at the guests, and that's why everyone left." The blood drained from my face.
"What?"
There were no guests. Nobody came. Uncle Frank's sigh carried decades of familial knowledge. I figured it was something like that. "Look, kiddo, there's something you should know. Your parents have been, let's say, adjusting the truth about you to the rest of the family for years." Over the next hour, Frank revealed a pattern I had never fully grasped. My parents had systematically lied about me to our extended family, painting me as unstable, ungrateful, and increasingly erratic. They told relatives I had refused to help them financially despite their support through college, a college they never paid for. They claimed I rarely visited despite their constant invitations, when in reality, I initiated most visits and was often told it wasn't a good time. But why? I asked, my voice small. Why would they do that? "Control, I guess," Frank said. "Your success threatens them somehow. They need to be the heroes of every story, which makes you the villain." After hanging up, memories began surfacing with new clarity. The time I won a prestigious marketing award, and Mom told everyone at church it was because she had connected me with the right people. The high school graduation where Dad gave a speech about how their sacrifices had made my scholarship possible when they had contributed nothing to my education. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, had a term for it: narcissistic parenthood. "They see you as an extension of themselves," she explained during our next session. "Your achievements belong to them. Your failures reflect poorly on them. But you as an independent person with needs and feelings? That concept doesn't compute." As this awareness grew, so did my anger. I began reviewing our financial history with fresh eyes. The loans I had given them over the years totaled more than $30,000. The credit score issues I battled in my 20s stemmed from accounts they had opened in my name. The family emergencies that always seemed to coincide with my financial windfalls now appeared suspiciously convenient. Meanwhile, Aunt Susan let slip that my parents had taken 3 luxury cruises in the past year. The Mediterranean one looked amazing from their Facebook photos, she gushed, unaware that they had told me they couldn't afford their property taxes and had borrowed $2,000 from me that same month. The cascading revelations affected every aspect of my life. I struggled to concentrate at work. My sleep became fragmented with nightmares about childhood incidents I had normalized but now recognized as abusive. My appetite disappeared, and I lost 8 pounds in 3 weeks. Carly noticed immediately. "You look exhausted," she said over coffee. "Is this still about the birthday?" "It's about my entire life," I replied, pushing away my untouched croissant. "I feel like I've been living in a funhouse mirror, and now I can finally see clearly. But the clarity hurts worse than the distortion did." Dr. Martinez helped me understand that what I was experiencing was a form of grief. "You're mourning the family you deserved but never had," she explained. "And you're mourning the version of yourself that believed their narrative about who you are." I tried one more time to have an honest conversation with my mother. I invited her to lunch, carefully choosing a public place where she would be less likely to make a scene. "Mom," I began after our food arrived, "I need to understand why you and Dad told everyone not to come to my birthday party." She cut her salad with precise movements, not looking up. "Melissa, I don't know where you get these ideas.
We've been worried about you.
These delusions aren't healthy." "It's not a delusion. Mario at Bellissimo told me you called to cancel everyone's attendance. Jessica from work said you called her too." Mom's expression hardened. "If you're going to accuse your own mother of such terrible things, perhaps we shouldn't be having lunch." She dabbed her lips with her napkin and stood up. "When you're ready to apologize, you know where to find us." She left me sitting alone at yet another table, but this time, the pain was laced with clarity. They would never acknowledge the truth. They would never change. The only variable I could control was my own response to their behavior. That evening, my cousin Taylor called. "Melissa, I just heard what happened at your party from Aunt Barbara. Are you okay?" I laughed bitterly. "Let me guess, she told you I went crazy and ruined everything?" "Actually, yes. But I didn't believe it. She's been doing this for years, making you out to be the problem. Why didn't anyone tell me?" The hurt of this secondary betrayal by extended family stung freshly. Taylor's voice was regretful. "We thought you knew. We thought it was just one of those dysfunctional family dynamics everyone silently agrees to pretend is normal." She hesitated before continuing. "There's something else you should know. They're planning their 40th anniversary party next month. They're telling everyone you're paying for it as your gift to them. They've already booked the Grand Ellington Hotel." The Grand Ellington was one of Chicago's most expensive venues. A sinking feeling spread through my stomach. "How much are they saying I'm covering?" "Everything. Venue, food, open bar. They said you insisted because you're so successful now thanks to all they've done for you." That night, alone in my apartment, I experienced the most intense panic attack of my life. My chest constricted, my vision tunneled, and I couldn't catch my breath. I slid down the wall onto my kitchen floor, gasping and sobbing as decades of manipulation crystallized into an unbearable pressure in my chest. When I could finally breathe again, I called Dr. Martinez's emergency line. Her calm voice anchored me as she guided me through grounding techniques. "What you're feeling is the accumulation of years of emotional abuse," she said. "The body keeps the score, Melissa. Your physical reaction is validating what your mind has been trying to tell you." That weekend, I researched narcissistic family dynamics obsessively. Every article, every book description, every forum post seemed to be describing my life with eerie accuracy. The golden child, my brother Tom. The scapegoat, me. The enabler, my sister Rachel. The cycles of love bombing and discard. The gaslighting. The financial exploitation. It was all there, validated by thousands of other people's experiences. The knowledge was both devastating and liberating. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't defective. I was the family member who had refused to keep playing a dysfunctional role, and that made me dangerous to the established order. As I stood in my living room Sunday night, Watching the sunset paint the Chicago skyline in shades of orange and pink, I made a decision. I would no longer participate in my own emotional execution. Whatever came next, I would face it standing in my truth. Little did I know, the most shocking test of this resolution was less than 24 hours away. Monday morning started like any other. I poured my coffee, reviewed my calendar for the day, and was about to step into the shower when my phone chimed with a text. Seeing my mother's name on the screen, I almost ignored it. Our lunch disaster was still fresh in my mind. But something compelled me to look. The message made my coffee mug slip from my fingers, shattering on the bathroom tile. Melissa, the deposit for our 40th anniversary party at the Grand Ellington is due this week. Your total contribution will be $3,200. Please transfer the money by Wednesday. This celebration means everything to us, and it's the least you can do after all we've sacrificed for you over the years. Love, Mom. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was reading. They hadn't asked if I would contribute. They hadn't even invited me to participate in the planning. They had simply decided I would pay, announced it to everyone, and now expected compliance. Before I could respond, another text arrived. We've already told everyone about your generous gift. Don't embarrass us. My hands shook so badly, I had to set the phone down on the counter. I stepped carefully around the broken ceramic and coffee, feeling as though I was moving underwater. The audacity was so extreme it felt almost surreal. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and sat on my couch, watching my phone explode with messages. Dad texted next. Your mother is waiting for confirmation about the money. Family reputation matters, Melissa. Then came the bombshell. My colleague William called, his voice uncomfortable. Melissa, I just got an invitation to your parents' anniversary party. It says, and I quote, please join us for this special celebration generously hosted by our daughter, Melissa Wright. I thought you should know. The room seemed to tilt sideways. When did you get this invitation? It came in yesterday's mail. Half the marketing department got them. They had invited my entire professional network. They had announced my generosity, without my knowledge or consent. They had created a situation where refusing would make me look terrible to my colleagues and superiors. Over the next hour, I learned they had invited neighbors from my childhood home, distant relatives I barely knew, my boss, and even my ex-boyfriend from college. The guest list totaled over 100 people, all expecting a lavish party, generously hosted by me. My cousin Taylor called next. I know you didn't agree to this, she said immediately. This is exactly what they did to your brother when he got his first big job. Remember that family reunion that mysteriously happened right after his promotion? I hadn't connected those dots before. Tom had complained for months about the financial strain after that event, eventually taking a second job temporarily. They've done this to you before, haven't they? Asked quietly. Taylor's silence was answer enough. There was the spring break trip to Florida when you were 19, she finally said. Aunt Barbara told everyone you had offered to treat the whole family because of your scholarship money. You ended up working double shifts all summer to pay off that credit card. The memory hit me like a physical blow. They had taken a vacation I couldn't afford to join, then sent me the bill for their accommodations. When I protested, Mom cried and said I had promised to help because they had given me everything. I had eventually capitulated, believing I was the ungrateful one. As these realizations cascaded through my mind, I remembered something even more disturbing. When I was 17, I discovered a credit card statement in my name for accounts I had never opened. Mom had casually explained that they had needed to establish my credit early and that they were managing it for me. I later learned they had charged thousands of dollars that I ended up paying off during my first years of college. I curled into a ball on my couch, overwhelmed by the decades of exploitation. Every time I had achieved something, earned something, or built something, they had found a way to extract value from it, financial, social, or emotional. They had never seen me as a daughter to love, but as a resource to mine. The physical symptoms returned with crushing intensity. My chest constricted, my breathing became shallow, and the edges of my vision darkened. I fumbled for my phone and managed to text Dr. Martinez. Emergency. Parents demanding $3,200 for anniversary. Can't breathe. She called immediately, talking me through the panic attack and arranging an emergency session that afternoon. In her quiet office, surrounded by plants and soft lighting, I showed her the texts and explained the situation. "Melissa," she said after listening carefully, "what you're describing is financial abuse. It's a form of control and exploitation that often accompanies emotional abuse. The question now is, what do you want to do about it?" "I can't pay for their party," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I won't. That's a healthy boundary," she affirmed. "But I want you to prepare for the backlash. People who have successfully exploited someone for decades don't typically accept resistance without a fight." We spent the session developing strategies for responding. Dr. Martinez emphasized that any explanation or justification would only be twisted and used against me. The clearer and more direct my response, the less ammunition they would have. That evening, alone in my apartment, I sat with my finger hovering over my phone. I had drafted and deleted a dozen responses. Some were pages long, detailing every hurt and manipulation. Others were formally polite declines. None of them felt right. In the end, simplicity won out. After consulting once more with Dr. Martinez, I made my decision. I transferred exactly $10 to my mother's account with a memo that read, "That's all you deserve." Then I sent a text with links to 3 articles about toxic parenting and emotional abuse. "I will not be financing your anniversary party. Please do not contact me again until you are ready to acknowledge the harm you've caused and make genuine amends." I turned off my phone, took a sleeping pill prescribed by Dr. Martinez, and fell into the first deep, untroubled sleep I'd had in weeks. Whatever storm was coming, I would face it in the morning. My phone had 57 missed calls when I turned it on the next morning. 34 voicemails. 83 text messages. Most were from my parents, but many came from relatives I rarely spoke with, all suddenly deeply concerned about my mental health and ungrateful attitude. The first voicemail from my mother was tearful. "Melissa, how could you do this to us after all we've done for you? $10? Is that all your family is worth to you?" By the 5th voicemail, the tears had transformed into cold fury. "You've always been selfish, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. Your father is devastated." The texts from extended family followed a pattern so predictable it was almost comical. "Family is everything, Melissa. You never know how long your parents will be around. After all they've sacrificed for you, they just want to celebrate their love with everyone. This isn't the Melissa we know." My sister Rachel called, her voice tight with discomfort.
Mom's hysterical, Mel.
"Just pay for the party, and we can all move on." "Did you know they told everyone I was hosting it without asking me?" I countered.
Her pause told me everything.
"They were sure you'd want to do it. You're the successful one." "That's not how it works, Rachel. They can't volunteer my money without my consent." "It's just money," she argued weakly. "Is it worth tearing the family apart?" The family was already broken. I'm just finally acknowledging it. After ending the call, I sat in my kitchen with a strange sense of calm. The storm was raging around me, but I was in the eye of it, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time. I made 3 decisions that morning. First, I would not engage with the barrage of manipulative messages. Second, I would establish a period of no contact with my parents to protect my mental health. And third, I would develop a support system outside my biological family.
Dr.
Martinez approved of this plan during our next session. "The extinction burst," she explained, "is what behavioral psychologists call this escalation of toxic behavior when long-established patterns are disrupted. It gets worse before it gets better." "Will it get better?" I asked. "Your parents may never change," she said honestly, "but your life absolutely will improve as you establish and maintain healthy boundaries." I began the process of building a new foundation for myself. I joined a support group for adult children of narcissistic parents, where I met others with eerily similar stories. I started journaling daily, documenting both past incidents and current feelings to counteract the gaslighting. I recommitted to exercise, finding that long runs along Lake Michigan helped clear my mind. As Dr. Martinez predicted, my parents escalated their tactics. Mom showed up at my workplace unannounced, creating a scene in the lobby that required security intervention. Dad called my boss, claiming concern about my unstable behavior and suggesting I might need a leave of absence. Fortunately, my professional reputation was solid enough that these attempts backfired. I documented every call, every message, every unwanted appearance, on Dr. Martinez's advice. If this continues, she warned, you may need legal protection. 2 weeks after my refusal to pay, their anniversary party proceeded without my contribution. I learned from Taylor that they had dramatically scaled back the event, moving it from the Grand Ellington to the banquet room at their country club. The narrative they spread was that I had promised to host the celebration but had suffered some kind of breakdown and abandoned them at the last minute. Some believed them. Others, particularly those who had witnessed their behavior over the years, had their doubts. A small but significant number of relatives reached out privately to express support for my decision. The most surprising ally emerged in my brother Tom. He called one evening, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. I saw the text Mom sent you about the money, he said without preamble. That was wrong, Mel. Really wrong. Coming from Tom, who had always been the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, this acknowledgement was monumental. They did something similar to me last year, he continued. Told everyone I was buying them a new car for their anniversary. I ended up taking out a loan I couldn't afford because I couldn't face the embarrassment of saying no. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Shame, I guess. And they've always pitted us against each other. You were the difficult one. I was the good son. It's taken me years to see how they engineered that dynamic. His support strengthened my resolve. When Aunt Judith called to berate me for abandoning my parents, I calmly replied, I understand you've heard their version of events. I've set a boundary that's healthy for me. I hope you can respect that, but if not, I'll need to limit our contact as well. The first time I delivered this message, my voice shook. By the fifth relative, it was steady and sure. I installed new locks on my apartment door and a security camera at the entrance. I notified my building's doorman not to allow my parents up without my explicit permission. I created email filters to divert their messages to a folder I could check when I felt emotionally prepared. These practical steps to protect my boundaries helped me feel more secure, but the internal work was harder. In therapy, I began to understand that my parents' behavior wasn't my fault. I hadn't caused it. I couldn't control it. And most importantly, I couldn't cure it. The only person you can change is yourself, Dr. Martinez reminded me. Your response to their toxicity is where your power lies. 6 weeks after my $10 transfer, I had my most significant breakthrough in therapy. I used to think if I just achieved enough, gave enough, explained enough, they would finally love me the way I needed, I told Dr. Martinez. Now I understand that their capacity for healthy love was broken long before I was born. It was never about me at all. For the first time, I felt genuine compassion for myself, for the child who had tried so hard to earn love that should have been freely given. And with that compassion came a strength I had never known I possessed. The week before Thanksgiving, I received formal invitations to 3 different celebrations from friends who knew my family situation. I chose to accept Carly's invitation, spending the holiday with her family and several other holiday orphans who had complicated relationships with their biological relatives. Surrounded by people who wanted nothing from me except my company, I experienced what a healthy celebration could feel like. No walking on eggshells. No subtle put-downs. No emotional debts being tallied. Just genuine connection and acceptance. That evening, I posted a photo of our Friendsgiving on Instagram with the caption, "Grateful for the family we choose." It was the most honest holiday sentiment I had ever expressed. Little did I know that this simple social media post would trigger the most dramatic confrontation yet. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I was enjoying a quiet evening at home. The holiday had been surprisingly peaceful, and I was beginning to adjust to my new normal of limited contact with my biological family. I had just settled on the couch with a novel when an aggressive pounding on my door made me jump. "Melissa, open this door right now." My mother's voice, shrill and demanding, echoed in the hallway. My heart rate doubled instantly. I approached the door, but didn't open it. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk." "Open the door." My father's voice now, the authoritative tone he had used throughout my childhood when issuing non-negotiable directives. "I'm not comfortable with that," I replied, proud of how steady my voice remained despite my trembling hands. "If you want to talk, we can schedule a time with Dr. Martinez present." "We are not speaking to a therapist." Mom's voice rose higher. "That woman has poisoned you against your own family. Everyone is talking about that terrible Thanksgiving post. How could you humiliate us like that?" I took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Martinez's advice about maintaining boundaries. "I didn't mention you in that post. I simply celebrated with friends." "You implied we're not your real family," she shouted. "After all we've done for you." A door opened down the hall, and I heard my neighbor Mrs. Patel ask if everything was okay. "It's fine," my father responded curtly. "Family matter." I heard Mrs. Patel retreat, but not before saying, "I'm calling the building manager if this continues." "Mom, Dad, I'm not opening the door. Please leave, or I'll have to call security." There was a moment of stunned silence, then the sound of a key in my lock. My blood ran cold. I had forgotten the spare key I had given them years ago for emergencies. "Stop," I shouted, pressing my weight against the door and engaging the security chain just as the door pushed inward. "You cannot come in." "That's trespassing." My mother's face appeared in the narrow opening, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Trespassing? We're your parents. I did not invite you here. I do not consent to your entry. If you continue trying to force your way in, I will call the police." "You ungrateful little." The venom in her voice shocked even me, who had experienced her anger many times before. "After everything we've sacrificed. We gave you life. We gave you everything. You gave me trauma," I replied, the words flowing from a place of newfound clarity. "You gave me anxiety. You gave me debt. You gave me the belief that I was never enough. That's not love, Mom. That's control. How dare you speak to me that way? Richard, do something." My father's response was to shoulder against the door, breaking the security chain. Panic surged through me as I stumbled backward. I grabbed my phone and retreated toward the kitchen. "Get out now, or I'm calling 911, I warned, my finger hovering over the emergency dial button. "We have a key. We have every right to be here," my father argued, stepping into my apartment as if he owned it. My mother followed, her gaze sweeping critically around my living space. "This is what you choose over family?" she sneered, gesturing at my modest but comfortable apartment. "This lonely existence? No husband, no children, just a career and some fake friends." Something in me snapped at her dismissal of the life I had built for myself. Not with rage, but with a sudden, complete clarity. "I choose peace," I said, pressing record on my phone's voice memo app. "I choose respect. I choose relationships based on mutual care rather than obligation and exploitation. And right now, I choose to enforce my boundaries by calling the police if you don't leave immediately." "You've always been dramatic," Mom scoffed, but I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "This isn't drama. This is self-respect." I held up my phone. "I'm recording this interaction. You've broken into my home against my explicit refusal. Leave now, or face the consequences." My father took a step toward me, his face darkening. "You think you're so much better than us now with your fancy job and downtown apartment. You know what your problem is, Melissa? You've forgotten where you came from. You've forgotten who made you." "I made me," I replied, my voice stronger than I had ever heard it. "Despite you, not because of you." Mother's face contorted with a rage I had never seen before, even in her worst moments. "You were always impossible to love," she hissed. "Always demanding, always needing attention. Do you know how exhausting it was to have a child like you?" The other mothers pitted me. The words were meant to devastate me, to reach into my deepest insecurities and shatter my newfound strength. A month ago, they might have succeeded. But now, they only confirmed what I had finally come to understand. Her inability to love me properly had never been my failure. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said simply. "But that's your burden to carry, not mine." Father tried the reasonable approach next, his voice dropping to the persuasive tone he used with difficult clients. "Melissa, we've clearly all said things in anger. Let's sit down like adults and work this out. The anniversary party is already paid for. We're not asking for money anymore. We just want our daughter back." "The daughter you want doesn't exist," I replied. "She was a fiction who existed to serve your needs and validate your self-image. I'm a real person with boundaries and feelings that you've never respected." I raised my phone, showing them that the recording was still active, and dialed 911 with my other hand. "This is my final warning. Leave now, or I will report this as a breaking and entering." Mother lunged forward, attempting to grab my phone. I stepped back, keeping the line open as the dispatcher answered. "Yes, I need to report 2 individuals who have broken into my apartment and are refusing to leave," I said clearly. "I have asked them repeatedly to exit, and they have ignored my requests. I do not feel safe." The effect was immediate. Father grabbed Mother's arm, his face pale. "We're leaving," he announced, pulling her toward the door. "But this isn't over, Melissa." "Actually, it is," I replied, following them at a safe distance to ensure they left. "Unless you're prepared to acknowledge the harm you've caused and commit to respecting my boundaries, this is absolutely over." As they stepped into the hallway, Mother turned back, her expression suddenly vulnerable in a way that triggered my lifelong instinct to comfort and appease her. "We just miss you," she said, her voice small. "We're getting older. Families should be together." I felt the familiar pull of guilt, the programming installed over decades of emotional manipulation. But I stood firm. "I need time and space," I said. "If you ever want a relationship with me again, it will be on new terms with clear boundaries and genuine respect. But breaking into my home has only confirmed that you're not ready for that yet." I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, listening to their retreating footsteps and muffled argument. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clearer than it had ever been. The police arrived 15 minutes later. I showed them the broken security chain and explained the situation. "Do you want to press charges?" the female officer asked. The question gave me pause. Part of me wanted legal consequences for their violation of my home and safety. Another part recognized that the criminal justice system wasn't the right venue for addressing decades of emotional abuse. Not at this time, I decided. But I would like documentation of the incident. I'll be filing for a restraining order. The officers took my statement and provided information about how to obtain an order of protection. One of them, an older man with kind eyes, gave me his card. "Family situations are complicated," he said. "But nobody has the right to make you feel unsafe in your own home, no matter who they are." The process of obtaining the restraining order was emotionally draining but necessary. I submitted the recording of the break-in, along with documentation of the harassment at my workplace and the dozens of unwanted contacts after I had clearly requested space. The day the temporary order was granted, I felt both vindicated and deeply sad. This legal document formalized the broken relationship with the people who should have been my most steadfast supporters. Yet it also represented my commitment to protecting myself from further harm. The family divided into factions after news of the restraining order spread. Some relatives cut contact with me entirely, unable to reconcile their image of my parents as pillars of the community with the evidence of their behavior. Others reached out privately with stories of their own negative experiences, painting a picture of a much more dysfunctional family system than I had realized. My brother Tom became an unexpected ally, visiting me for coffee and acknowledging the patterns he had previously been blind to. "I always thought you were exaggerating," he admitted. "But after seeing how they've reacted to simple boundaries, I get it now. This isn't normal." Rachel remained caught in the middle, still hoping for family reconciliation without addressing the underlying issues. "Can't you just apologize so we can all move forward?" she pleaded during a tense phone call. Forward to what? I asked. More of the same patterns that have damaged all of us? That's not moving forward, Rachel. That's running in circles. With the holidays approaching, I made proactive plans to protect my well-being. I booked a short trip to a beach resort for Christmas, removing myself physically from the emotional battlefield. I scheduled extra therapy sessions to process the grief that still occasionally ambushed me. And most importantly, I continued strengthening connections with the people who genuinely cared for me, friends who respected my boundaries, colleagues who valued my contributions, and the support group members who understood my journey without explanation. 6 months after my birthday party disaster, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment, a housewarming of sorts, though I hadn't moved. I'm warming the house with the right energy this time, I explained to the puzzled but supportive attendees. As I looked around at the people laughing and chatting in my living room, I realized I had created something my parents had never managed despite their obsession with appearances: authentic community based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The restraining order provided legal protection, but this circle of caring people provided something equally important: the emotional security to continue my healing journey, whatever challenges lay ahead. 1 year later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror on the morning of my 36th birthday. The woman reflected back at me looked different somehow, not just in the subtle physical changes of another year past, but in the confidence of her posture, the clarity in her eyes, the absence of tension around her mouth. "Happy birthday, Melissa," I whispered to my reflection, a private ritual of self-acknowledgement that would have felt impossibly self-indulgent a year earlier. Later that evening, I welcomed 12 people into my apartment for an intimate dinner party. There were no elaborate decorations, no expensive venue, just good food, genuine conversation, and the warm glow of being surrounded by people who chose to be there because they valued me, not what I could provide for them. Carly raised her glass as we gathered around my dining table. "To Melissa, who taught us all something about courage this year. May 36 be your best year yet." The contrast between this celebration and my 35th birthday couldn't have been more profound. Last year, I had sat alone in an empty restaurant, feeling worthless and abandoned. This year, I was surrounded by connection that felt authentic and nourishing. My healing journey over the past year hadn't been linear. There were days when grief overwhelmed me, when I questioned my decision to establish such firm boundaries with my family. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that these doubts were normal, even healthy parts of the process. "You're not grieving the relationship you had," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "You're grieving the relationship you deserved but never received. That's a legitimate loss." Through weekly therapy, support groups, and extensive reading, I had begun to understand the generational nature of my family's dysfunction. My mother's own childhood had been marked by emotional neglect and impossibly high expectations. My father had grown up with an alcoholic mother and absent father. They had recreated the only relationship patterns they knew, perpetuating cycles of control, emotional manipulation, and conditional love. This understanding didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me contextualize it. Their treatment of me had never been about my worth or lovability. It had been about their own unhealed wounds and limited emotional capacity. 3 months after the restraining order expired, my mother reached out with a carefully worded email. It wasn't the heartfelt acknowledgement of harm I might have hoped for, but it also wasn't filled with the usual accusations and guilt trips. She requested a meeting to discuss moving forward as a family. After consulting with Dr. Martinez, I agreed to meet them in a public cafe, with conditions clearly stated in advance. No discussions of money, no blame shifting, no recruitment of other family members to pressure me. To my surprise, they accepted these terms. The meeting was awkward but civil. My mother had aged visibly, the lines around her mouth deeper, her hair showing more gray than I remembered. My father seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating than the figure who had loomed so large in my childhood fears. "We've been seeing a counselor," Mom said after we had exchanged stilted pleasantries. "Pastor Jim suggested it after what happened at your apartment." It wasn't exactly an acknowledgement of their breaking and entering, but it was closer than I had expected. The counselor suggested we might have some issues with boundaries, Dad added, clearly uncomfortable with the terminology. He gave us some books to read. I nodded, maintaining the neutral expression I had practiced with Dr. Martinez. I'm glad you're getting support. We miss you, Melissa, Mom said, her voice catching slightly. The family isn't the same without you. In the past, such a statement would have activated my guilt and sense of responsibility for their emotional well-being. Now, I recognized it as an expression of their feelings, not an obligation for me to fulfill. I understand, I replied. I've missed aspects of family connection too. But I need more than just missing each other to rebuild a relationship. I need acknowledgement of the patterns that were harmful and consistent respect for my boundaries moving forward. They exchanged glances, and I could see them struggling with the request. Acknowledgement meant admitting fault, something that had been anathema in our family culture. We didn't always get it right, Dad finally offered. Parenting doesn't come with a manual. It wasn't the deep recognition I hoped for, but it was a tentative first step. We agreed to occasional brief contacts, a monthly phone call, holiday cards, perhaps a coffee meeting every few months. Each interaction would be an opportunity to establish healthier patterns, with the understanding that I would step back again if old behaviors reemerged. Some might view this limited contact as a failure, an incomplete reconciliation. I saw it as a realistic approach that protected my well-being while leaving space for potential growth. A true forgiveness, I had learned, wasn't about pretending the harm never happened. It was about releasing the expectation that those who hurt you could ever fully make it right. My relationship with extended family evolved as well. Some relatives remained firmly in my parents' camp, viewing me as the unreasonable one who had disrupted family harmony. Others maintained connections with both sides, careful not to take positions or relay messages. A small but significant group became closer to me, appreciating the authenticity that had emerged from my boundary setting. The most unexpected development came in my relationship with my brother Tom. After our parents' attempt to break into my apartment, he had begun his own journey of examination and healing. We started meeting monthly for dinner, carefully rebuilding a sibling relationship that had been distorted by our parents' triangulation and favoritism. I think I was always jealous of your courage, he admitted during one of these dinners. You questioned things I never dared to. You saw the dysfunction I pretended not to notice. Professional success came alongside my personal growth. The energy I had previously expended managing family drama and seeking approval was now channeled into creative projects and genuine connections. I received a significant promotion at work, began mentoring junior colleagues, and even started dating someone who respected my boundaries and supported my healing journey. As my 36th year unfolded, I came to understand that families exist on a spectrum. Some are nurturing gardens where individuals can flourish. Others are battle zones where survival requires armor and vigilance. Most fall somewhere in between, with mixtures of health and dysfunction that ebb and flow over time. My parents had created an environment that was fundamentally unsafe for my authentic self. Their love had been heavily conditional, their support riddled with control mechanisms, their approval impossible to secure permanently. Acknowledging this reality wasn't an act of blame, but of clarity, the necessary foundation for building a different kind of life. I also realized that while I couldn't change my biological family, I could create a chosen family built on mutual respect, genuine care, and the freedom to be imperfectly human. The friends gathered around my birthday table embodied this new definition of family. People who celebrated my successes without envy, supported me through challenges without keeping score, and loved me for who I was, not for what I could provide. The most profound lesson of my 35th year wasn't about family dynamics or narcissistic patterns, though understanding those had been crucial to my healing. The deepest wisdom I gained was about my own inherent worthiness, a value that existed independent of achievement, appearance, compliance, or usefulness to others. As we finished our birthday meal and moved to the living room for dessert, I felt a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. The wound of last year's birthday had transformed into something unexpected, a gateway to authentic living. Have you ever had to draw difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't see your worth? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? And what did you learn in the process? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember that your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content about healing and growth. And know that wherever you are in your journey, you deserve relationships that honor your inherent worth. Thank you for being